Curtin Radio.
Well, of course, there were huge headlines at the time. Television news were covering this, and they still are, really. It's the life and times, of course, we're talking about, and the suspected death of Ponzi scheme perpetrator Melissa Caddick. But, of course, now is the aftermath. And joining us today is Alex Martin. He's a business lawyer and litigation strategist and director of Taurus Legal. Good afternoon to you, Alex.
Good afternoon, Jenny.
It's an horrific story, highlighting, people that have no empathy, they're narcissistic and they use people. It's a terrible, terrible thing to have happen to your family and friends, which has proven she did do that.
Yes, it is quite an amazing story, and I think with her passing away like that, or with her being missing,
assumed,
it adds an element of salaciousness to the whole story. But it's certainly the case when you hear her. I've heard her telephone messages, and she sounds absolutely friendly and kind and warm and loving in the phone messages that she left to investors, and obviously it's alleged anyway that she was taking millions of dollars from them and never paying it back with no intention of paying it back. And it's quite shocking that someone could be so warm and friendly and then at the same time be so cold and calculating.
They're out there, Alex. It happens. But the Ponzi scheme, if people don't know too much about it, it's been around for many years, hasn't it?
It has, yes. Actually, it was named after Charles Ponzi in the 1920s, who came up with apparently the first one, although I'm sure they date back longer than that, where an investor, or the first tranche of investors, if you like, invest money, and then the second tranche of investors invest more money, and the second tranche's money is used to pay the first tranche's dividends, if you like. And then the whole thing just goes on and on and on. And, of course, it's unsustainable. You've got to keep getting more and more investors. But it sort of works quite well because people think that the investments are making money because money's being returned, and they tell all their friends.
Well, you mentioned on her messages and that she was sounded kind and friendly. Of course, that was the way that she seduced people. I'm your friend. I can offer you a higher interest rate return on your money. You have to trust me because I'm your cousin or, whatever. And unfortunately, very vulnerable people that they find want to have a bit of an improvement in their life. And anyway, I think everyone knows how cold and calculating these people can be. And it's still a very big threat out there for people not to get caught up in this.
Yeah, it sure is. What was really one of the elements that was so shocking to me was that she preyed really on her own family, or it's alleged she preyed on her own family and her own friends. These weren't strangers. These are people who, might be a cousin or might be a sister-in-law or might be whatever it is, people that you would think, people would think that you could trust that sort of a person. And she, led this sort of high-end life, so you see that she's wealthy and she must know a thing or two about investment and so on. And so it is quite shocking. A lot of these Ponzi schemes are sort of public schemes, or they're done to strangers. But this one was really family and friends, and she was preying on that trust that you have.
It's interesting that we're chatting to you about this today, because I was speaking on air last week about the movie I saw, a dramatised movie of her life on Stan. Have you seen that?
I haven't actually. It's on my list of things to see. Yes, I've been keeping up to date with the case, but I haven't seen the dramatised version. I'm a bit excited to see it. Was it good?
Well, it's interesting. You get to understand her thinking to a point where she's just so obsessed by the jewellery and the clothing and how the authorities started to investigate her and how she dealt with it, and the money she got from everybody. But there was a dramatised ending, and they did say that this was exactly that she actually went and had her, you would have been told this, had her foot cut off because she wanted the authorities to think that she'd actually been murdered. And she had this bloke with a chainsaw take the foot off. Oh my gosh, got worse.
Right. If that's true, that's commitment, I tell you.
It sure is.
Enough, perhaps.
And the last shot is of her laying on the back of a beautiful yacht in the Mediterranean with an artificial foot. So we'll see what happens.
Enjoying yourself, I see.
Investigation's obviously still going on because they still haven't got proof, have they?
That's right. At the moment, there's still allegations. She's been convicted of some crimes, which include trading, calling herself a financial advisor when she wasn't. So they're convictions, but there isn't convictions around the fraud and the allegations of the Ponzi scheme, if you like.
Oh.
So there hasn't actually been, some elements of it haven't actually been proven, so we still have to say they're alleged.
Before we move on to the family situation,
Sure.
With all your research, Alex, do you know what sort of a young woman she was, to get to that point?
Yes. So the little bit I do know about her, she displayed the same characteristics as a lot of white-collar offenders. They tend to be different than what you might call blue-collar offenders. So people who steal money from the bank, who work at the bank, they're different to people who rob your house.
Yeah.
White-collar offenders tend to be very status-seeking, extravagant, and they tend to be people who are interested in getting rich quickly without doing the work.
Yeah.
And wouldn't we all like that? But she certainly had those characteristics, or it seems that she had those characteristics
Quite
as a young woman.
Woman.
That's right, at university and so on.
Oh, that is interesting. Yeah, well, that is a personality type, that is for certain. And, of course, friends and family around her at the time don't realise it's going to get to that extent. Now, of course, we saw on the news, I think this week, Alex, that her husband has been evicted from the home that they have or had.
Yes.
And the mother, or the parents, the mother of Melissa Caddick's, they've got an apartment. What is the situation there?
Yeah, so that's a tricky one. So the general position is that individuals are not responsible for the debts of their partners. So Melissa Caddick's husband shouldn't be responsible for her debts. And if assets are solely held by one party or the other, then they can be sold. So if they're held by the husband only, then the husband keeps them. But when you're dealing with joint assets, which was certainly the case, the house was jointly held with the husband and the apartment was jointly held with the parents. So when you're dealing with joint assets, typically they can be sold by force if needed, and the court has ordered the sale of the house. They can be sold, and then the portion that's fairly referable to Melissa rather than her husband will be used to pay her debts. And I think in this case he's actually challenging he had an interest in the house, so he's walked away. And I think the house is worth about 15 million, so that'll be a significant win for the creditors of the estate. And there's about 23 million still outstanding.
Can I just get this defined from you? When the husband, did he financially put some money toward the purchase of that property as the parents put money toward the purchase of the apartment?
Yes, you picked up on a really key element. The husband, as I understand it, didn't contribute at all to the purchase or the upkeep of the house, whereas the parents have contributed about 1.1 million to, I'm not sure if it's the mortgage or it was the purchase of the apartment. So the parents have financially contributed, so they're going to have a much better interest in the apartment. And I think, in fairness, they should at least get that 1.1 million or some amount referable to it back when the apartment's sold, and the rest should go to Melissa's creditors.
So the husband, you don't think, really is going to get anything out of this at all?
Yes, well, the husband had to give back his Lamborghini, so he got a Lamborghini.
Whoa,
for a
poor
while.
man.
He had a yellow, yeah, that's right, he had a yellow Lamborghini. So, I mean, you talk about lavish, right? I mean, it was a present from her. If my partner gave me a yellow Lamborghini as a present, I'd be pretty happy with myself. But I'd also be a little bit suspicious.
True.
So although I guess if she was a financial advisor, which everyone thought she was, perhaps she knows a lot about investment, which is what people think. But yes, it looks like he's going to walk away with not a lot, although I think the reality is he probably didn't contribute financially to the assets, and maybe didn't really, I don't think he even did much around the house in terms of renovating or looking after the house or anything like that. I think he was a good man.
I think he was a DJ and he probably played music for her, something. Yeah.
Yes, I think, yes. So he's going to walk away, but the parents won't. They'll get some money out of it.
So we've got to assume then that he, in his innocence, probably didn't realise what she was doing, except just being a very successful financial advisor, he not knowing that she wasn't qualified.
Yes, well, that's a very interesting question. No evidence that I've uncovered has suggested that he knew anything about it. So there's no evidence that shows he knew about it.
Yeah.
So I think we have to assume he didn't. And I guess she's such a it's alleged she was such a clever manipulative person, she was probably able to manipulate even him. And even if he knew about it, I guess there's a difference between doing it and knowing about it. So if he knew about it, he's still not as responsible as she is for doing it.
So what's the next step now, Alex? What's going to happen?
So there'll be more criminal prosecutions. So the ASIC have done their prosecution. The police, the public prosecutors, will bring a criminal prosecution. And if she's not around, then it'll be done without her there. And then also there's a liquidator, or they're called a receiver, who's responsible for who's acting on behalf of the creditors to recover as much of the assets as they can and get them repaid. And they've already secured an order to sell the house, and they're seeking an order to sell the apartment that is jointly owned with the parents. So they'll be sold, or whatever assets can be uncovered by the receiver will be sold, and that money will go firstly to pay out the mortgage, and then to pay out the receiver and whatever costs they've incurred, sale costs and so on, and then it'll go to the creditors. So there'll be a relatively significant recovery, although I think a lot of people will still be out of pocket.
Well, yes, all the people that she had involved in the scheme, I mean, they're just working people, and let's just hope that they do get some compensation. Are you representing anybody in this case?
No, I'm not connected with the litigation. I suppose I'm a litigation strategist, an expert on litigation, and I follow these kind of cases just as a matter of kind of interest, and to try and get to learn a bit about strategy and where people went right and where people went wrong, if you like.
Do you know, for some reason, we're getting crimes being revealed sometimes 20 years later after they started them. We've had a lot over here in Western Australia of late, and, people in corporate positions that have embezzled and, multi-millions of dollars. And you wonder why we don't have some sort of scheme, I suppose, in place to prevent as much of this as happening as we possibly can.
Yeah, so I think there's a good case to say that that ASIC, the Australian sort of corporate police, should have stronger powers and better funding. The regular police, got strong powers and good funding, but the ASIC really are quite a small organisation, and they have prosecuted Melissa, but really it's their job. They're the front line in protecting the community from corporate criminals. And I think there's also an element of personal responsibility we've all got to take about being a bit more
savvy,
careful. Yeah, savvy, exactly. I mean, I've got clients who say, "Oh, yeah, here you go. Just you take the money out of my account. That's fine." I say, "Well, I'm not." Clients are very trusting, can be, and I think people at financial advisors, accountants, they're very trusting towards those people, and of course, many of them and most of them deserve that trust. Yeah. But I think we've all got to be a bit careful about who we're handing over our bank details to, or authorities to take money out of our accounts. And if people are investing on our behalf, we should really pay attention to what's going on.
It's all too easy, I think, today with technology. For so many people to transfer funds and that sort of thing. Yeah. But Alex, it's very interesting that you have had this involvement and interest in this. And I think we're all quite anxious to see, number one, whether she's sitting on a yacht in the Mediterranean with an artificial foot. Or whether, in fact, she's living in luxury, or whether she's buried somewhere.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, if I was to hazard a guess, I'd say she's probably done something to herself. She's gone and jumped in the water or something. Oh, okay. She didn't take her mobile phone with her. She didn't take anything with her. She went for the day after the house was raided, she went for a walk and never came back. So I think she's probably floating around in the harbour somewhere, unfortunately.
But why is a foot missing? I mean...
Oh, well, look, that's a bit beyond my experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe you can bounce around in the ocean and it comes off. Look, I don't know.
I know we don't. I know we don't.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's a good movie anyway. I really suggest you have a look at it, give you a bit of an insight, I think. And the actress was very good. She looked very much like her, actually. She's very good.
Right. Oh, well, look, I'm excited to watch it, and I might have some more to say once I've seen it.
Yeah, good on you. Yeah. Lovely to speak to you, Alex. Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you indeed. That was Alex Martin.
Curtin Radio.